Hey guys, and welcome to State of the Cowboy. State of the Cowboy is the sort of progress show that I'm going to be doing for the next couple of weeks to sort of encapsulate some of the details around doing the 28 days of streaming that I'm doing for February of 2019. The goal here is to kind of just review sort of the high-level things that were announced, talk about some of the issues week to week, and talk about the goals as they were sort of stated as a part of the announcement that was done on February 1st. Really, this is just an opportunity for me to kind of quickly sort of summarize and dig into it, and then get back to the regular process of streaming. Originally, I was going to actually do this broadcast live, but I was having some bandwidth issues, which will get acknowledged next week, and as a part of the second week of streaming. And so I'm just taking the opportunity to do this as a test recording, but also maybe potentially premiere it on the channel, and that way upload it to YouTube, do all those various things. I will go into more detail about what actually happens with this video post this video, but for right now, what this is just sort of encapsulating the first week of Video Store Cowboy, February 2019, the 28 days of streaming effort. So let's get started. So when I sort of announced this whole thing on February 1st, I had actually intended to do it a couple days beforehand. Scheduling and preparation for the 28 days of streaming was a lot more challenging than I was expecting, and so the announcement didn't happen until February 1st. And when it did, these are the things that I talked about during the announcement. I talked about where the channel was and the effort for Video Store Cowboy just in general was. I thanked the community and the viewers. Loved the fact that the community and the viewers were absolutely badass and just kind of hanging out and doing their thing, participating, coming from various channels, and just sort of coming into sort of my channel, my experience, my community, my world, and just allowing this whole thing to kind of come together. And then I announced the 28 days of streaming for February. This was sort of a thing I'd been throwing around the idea for a while, and the desire basically was to get the full-on experience of what it was to do, like a dedicated streaming effort for a set number of days, just to kind of get into the rhythm and momentum of things. A little more challenging than I was expecting, even in the first 7 days, and I'll talk about that moving forward. But for all intents and purposes, the goal was to just get that much more experience in streaming, getting that much more comfortable in front of the camera, and really just sort of encapsulating everything that I wanted to do, and just try to throw it together and make it happen, and then learn from those mistakes and build off of that. And so after that, I talked a little bit about office hours for Unsung, which is currently it's going to be in its 5th week, starting next week. It'll be day 10 or 11, I believe. No, it'll be day 11, that's right. Office hours for Scoundrels of Waterdeep, which was actually supposed to happen on day 8, but that is not happening today. I'll talk a little bit about that. And then Clay That Woke, which has been delayed for 2 more weeks, so we won't be starting office hours for that until then. We also did announce charity streams, and there's a charity stream coming up on February 16th. I'll talk a little bit more about the effort going into that so far, sort of towards the end of this. And then next week we'll be talking a lot more about the effort going on with the charity stream. On top of that, we talked about a new hour-long tabletop show, which will be premiering next week on the, I think it's the 15th, February 15th. That's going to be something really exciting, and I'll be announcing that at the beginning of next week. I also have a new show coming this Sunday, on February 10th, with Dr. Rubik's, a member of my community, and she and I will be streaming together and doing something a little bit different, something we haven't really seen on Twitch yet, or at least that's my assumption. All the looking that I did not produce any results. And I talked about the fact that there will be some more premieres coming through the month, and then talking about March as we get closer to March. So before I go into any other sort of elements of it, I kind of wanted to do something that Dr. Rubik's suggested, and I thought was a really fantastic idea, which is talk about day to day what the challenges were for each day. Because on day 1, I ran into a really interesting situation, which was I muted myself during the announcement. And in doing that mute, I practiced my spiel basically, and then had to restart. Thankfully, one of friends of the channel, Skagith, streamer in his own right, tabletop GM in his own right, amazing guy, pointed it out to me. I restarted, and actually ended up doing a much better stream. And what I loved about that was, I felt comfortable just kind of going back and rehashing all the information. What's interesting about that is, in doing that, I should have learned from that mistake, and I should have done this particular stream before that. But I'm really kind of in the mode of just kind of rolling with it and doing exactly what I need to do at the time. So day one, of course, was muted during the initial announcement. I've got the video. I'm still editing the video from the announcement. I need to actually upload it to YouTube, just because I committed to doing that. And I should upload that as a blooper at the end, where you can see me animated and kind of thing. It's really interesting. So day two was supposed to be Scoundrels of Waterdeep over on Harley's Armory's channel. That didn't happen because there was a huge event for the Super Bowl in Fortnite on Saturday, and it was just killing the ingest servers. We went for about an hour trying to figure out what we were going to do, and then finally we decided that we weren't going to actually do the stream. And so I decided I would stream later on during the day, and that actually happened at a later point, and I actually did some Red Dead Online. But the lesson learned there is, kind of get a real sense of what other schedules are, big streams, big events, big sort of, online sort of events that could affect the channel. And so I've started paying attention to a little bit more to some of that. Day three was an interesting one. Got to bed a little late that night, went to a midnight movie on day two. Day three, there wasn't an established schedule. I was going to announce, sort of an ad hoc, sort of as it was happening kind of a thing. Didn't really happen until 9 o'clock that night. And that was in part that there was a little bit of a confidence issue and some struggle around just getting mentally into the moment about that. And mental health has been a real struggle sort of this first entire week. And I didn't realize the amount of sort of, prep that really needed to go into these efforts around 28 days or 30 days or 31 days of whatever you're doing. And so there's a real sort of mindset that you have to get into. You have to get into the work ethic. And I think that routine and schedule and just preparing yourself and getting that ethic in place is a really important element of this experience. Day four ended up being technical issues, bandwidth stuff. I have trouble with my bandwidth all the time. It's one of the reasons I'm actually recording this video right now, is because I was currently experiencing a bandwidth problem just before I got started. So I decided to record this, I'd upload it, and then premiere it, and then go from there, sort of on Twitch, and then I'll do it also on YouTube. But technical issues really do sort of plague, me on and off, and usually they are bandwidth related. So that's one of the things I'm working on. Day five is, again, another mental health thing: routine, regiment, ethic. Sort of the ethics of getting in, sort of into that mindset. I was on Unmade Gaming's channel for our show Unsung. And that ended up going really well. Had a really great experience. It was one of the better shows that we've had for that particular, tabletop show so far. But it just took me a while to get into the mindset to be able to just go and do it. And what it took was me just saying, go do this, go focus on this part in my head and getting my sort of my head wrapped around it. And so there's a lot of what I've heard is called mental hygiene that really makes sense. So then I got to day six, and then more internet issues, of course. Challenges, problems, what have you. Eventually I got to stream. I streamed for 2 hours. That ended up being sort of a good thing. No, I'm sorry. That was yesterday I was talking about, day 7. Day 6, actually, I had a crash in the middle of the stream. So I started on my regular time, was playing some Red Dead Online, ran into an issue where the stream crashed. Turns out my bandwidth, just kind of went out the window. I just had no connectivity through my internet service provider. And it was really frustrating because I spent about a half hour trying to get the stream back up and everything else, and it was incredibly discouraging. So mental health could go at the end of day 6, sort of, the day 6 effort. But really what was going on was there's just this with the bandwidth just sort of, falling flat on its face and not having any access to the outside world. It felt really isolating and really sort of like frustrating. Day 7 was, I only streamed for 2 hours yesterday. Routine and schedule is definitely the element that I would talk about in respect to uh, getting on task, and that actually has kind of happened today too for day 8, and I'll talk a little bit about that for next week. But so just getting into that mode and getting all the things that need to get done prior to a stream, making sure you hit your scheduled time, and then going to the end of that. Even with a small community, even with as little of a community as I have, and I have probably a community of about 10 people who are paying attention to me right now, that still is important. It's still important for them to be able to count on when to be able to connect. So, yeah, routine and schedule seems to be an important critical part. All right. So as we kind of move on through this, that was kind of challenges, and as I'm talking about it, and I'm going to take a second and just kind of talk about the meta on this. As I'm talking about it, it feels really good to kind of encapsulate all of that and really kind of summarize. I feel a little bit more comfortable with sort of the issues that came up and how things were addressed or challenges were sort of tackled. So that's exciting. So moving on, I wanted to talk about some of the goals that I established when I announced that I would be doing 28 days of streaming. And so to add some context for that, I decided that at the end of this, what I would do is I talk about the stats of the current situation as I started streaming on February 1st. Then I'll talk about the goals that I established, and then I'll talk about where the current numbers are sitting, at day 7. So end of stream yesterday, I took these numbers, and this is where I stand currently. So beginning of February, there were 308 followers to the channel. We had an average of 2.5 viewers per broadcast and an average of 2.5 active chatters per broadcast. And that was for streaming during the month of January. That was the past sort of 30 days kind of encapsulated kind of a thing. That's where the channel stood on February 1st. Now the goals I established were really small and in the hopes of just kind of having something that's measurable, to show some amount of progress that the effort actually brought in. So by the end of February, the goals were as follows: 325 followers to the stream, or to the channel, which is quite ambitious given the audience size that I have and sort of the active viewership that I get right now. An average of 5 viewers per broadcast, which seems a little bit more doable given that my community is about 10 right now, and at that point I was averaging about 2.5 viewers. And an average of 5 chatters per broadcast. And again, that's just folks just jumping in, being able to say hello really quickly and stepping out. The way that Twitch kind of measures that metric is the average amount of everybody who says something in chat, even if it's just like a spammer or a troll or something like that. So I figured an average of 5 matching sort of the average viewership made sense for the time being, given how small the community was. Well, so I was a little surprised at the numbers when I looked at them yesterday. Now, I only grew by 1 follower, and that's growth. The actual number was I got 2 new followers for the week, but I lost a follower somewhere in the mix as well. So it sort of washed out. So basically, I only gained 1 follower through that in respect to the metric or the number. But it's still nice to have somebody new sort of paying attention to the notifications for when the channel goes live. My average increased, and this is where it's interesting. This number fluctuates. I actually watched it during the week. This number fluctuates a lot, but where it normalized out for the 7 days for the month of February is 3.2 viewers. So that means I'm actually reaching a third person for the most part, and that's kind of nice. That's a nice feeling. The interesting thing to me was this average of number of active chatters. Wow, that in and of itself was a little surprising. But then I realized I got people coming in, random people. They'll say hello, they'll ask a question about the game. In this case, Red Dead Online was what we were playing, and then they'll sort of vanish and disappear. It's nice. It's a nice experience to have people just kind of jump in and do that. It's also nice to have your regular average viewers just kind of chatting as well. That way you're building a rapport and you've got some friends that you can talk to. So those are the numbers as it currently stands right now. I was really surprised at all of that. It ended up being probably the biggest surprise was the number of viewers. And so as I'm kind of finishing this up, I'm realizing that I really enjoyed doing this, and there's some other things that I would probably add in respect to kind of talking more about, you know, the state of the channel and the, you know, the state of the effort as well. But I kind of want to keep this short and sweet, and just do this broadcast at this particular point. So I'm going to close up and say it's week 1. I had a really great time doing these 7 days of streaming so far, even though there were some mental health challenges and some other issues that I was running into. And I'm looking forward to getting into week 2, doing the new show with Dr. Rubik's, doing some different stuff next week on the channel. I'm going to be switching the game up. It's no longer just going to be Red Dead Online. And I'm going to be doing, of course, the new tabletop show for next week. We've got the charity stream next week. There's just a whole bunch of different things happening next week, you know, just to sort of, you know, to bring a new, sort of a new element of progress to the channel. So in closing, I just want to say thanks to everyone who watches this. Thanks to the viewers. And I will see you guys in 7 days with another update. That is the state of the Cowboy. Thank you guys. Have a good one.